The VIP cabin sparkled with polished leather seats and crystal glasses, a world designed for power and prestige. In row one sat the Grant twins, Darius and Damon, two 18-year-olds traveling to meet their father, a man who had built an empire from nothing. Their tickets were stamped VIP priority. But the uniformed attendant who stopped at their row didn't bother checking. "Young men," she said curtly, "these seats are reserved for special guests. You'll need to move to the back." Darius frowned. "Our boarding passes say 1 Ampere and 1B. She smirked, waving them away. "Glitches happen. Let's not make a scene. Economy is that way." A ripple of murmurs swept through the cabin. Damon's jaw tightened, humiliation burning. But instead of shouting, he pulled out his phone, tapped a number, and held it to his ear. The attendant scoffed. "Who are you calling?" Damon's eyes narrowed. "Corporate." The phone clicked. A deep voice answered. And within minutes, the arrogance that had filled the cabin was about to be obliterated. "Welcome to Respect Win Stories, a place where powerful tales come alive, and every word carries meaning. No matter where you are watching, from New York, Texas, California, or anywhere across the United States, even from the other side of the world, I would love to know where you are joining from today. Share it in the comments below, and while you do, sit back, relax, and let your heart open to a story that will move your soul and spark your imagination. Every story here carries a message because in the end, respect always wins." Let us begin. Darius and Damon Grant were identical twins, but anyone who knew them well could tell them apart in an instant. Darius, calm and deliberate, had his father's quiet intensity. Damon, quick-witted and sharp-tongued, carried their mother's fire. Together, they were a force, different halves of the same resolve. This trip wasn't just another flight. It was their first time traveling alone on Hale International's flagship route, a gesture of trust from their father, Marcus Grant, the CEO whose name commanded respect in every boardroom. He told them, "Sit in those seats proudly. They're yours by right, not by favor." But respect wasn't what the twins received. Instead, they were treated as imposters, dismissed before they could even unfold their tickets. The sting was familiar. They had seen arrogance before, but this time, Damon's call wasn't just to his father, it was to the chain of command their father had built. And arrogance was about to face accountability. The attendant's heels clicked against the cabin floor as she folded her arms. Her name tag read Keller, but the steel in her voice carried louder than her badge. "I don't care what your boarding passes say," Keller snapped. "These seats are held for VIP executives. You two don't look the part. Move to economy." Darius held up his ticket, calm but firm. "It says 1 Ampere and 1B. Scan it again." Her lips curled into a smirk. "I don't need to. I've been working flights longer than you've been alive. I know a mistake when I see one." Passengers in the surrounding rows shifted uneasily. Some glanced at the twins with pity, others with quiet judgment. A man in a tailored suit muttered, "Entitlement these days," shaking his head. Damon's blood boiled, but he kept his voice steady. "We don't owe you proof. You owe us respect." That earned a scoff. Keller waved her hand dismissively. "If you won't move, I'll call security before we even taxi. Don't make this harder on yourselves." Darius leaned back, refusing to budge. "Then call them. We're not moving from seats we paid for." Phones began lifting discreetly, recording. Passengers knew when a storm was brewing, and this one was thick with static. Keller pressed the intercom, summoning backup. Within seconds, 2 more attendants arrived, both backing her without question. "What's the problem?" one asked. "These boys think they belong here," Keller sneered. "But these are reserved seats. Get 'em out." Damon chuckled bitterly. "Funny. We thought belonging was determined by tickets, not skin tone." Gasps broke out. Passengers shifted again, some nodding in agreement, others stiffening in discomfort. The tension was undeniable now. Keller flushed but snapped back. "Watch your mouth. I won't be accused of that." "Then don't act like it," Damon fired back. Before the attendants could respond, Damon pulled out his phone, scrolled, pressed a number labeled Dad's Direct Line. Priority. The cabin stilled. Everyone could hear the faint dial tone. Keller scoffed. What? Calling Mommy? The line clicked. A deep baritone voice came through instantly. Damon? What's wrong? Damon's lips curved into the faintest smile. Hi, Dad. We've got a situation on Flight 209. They're trying to kick us out of our seats. Says we don't belong. The name Marcus Grant didn't need introduction, but when Damon said Dad, the words landed like a hammer. The attendants froze. Passengers whispered. One man's voice carried above the murmurs, Marcus Grant? As in the CEO? Darius leaned forward, his tone low but cutting. That's right, and if they keep pushing this, Dad, I think you'll want to know the names on their badges. Keller's smirk faltered. This is absurd. But Marcus Grant's voice thundered through the line, loud enough for the cabin to hear. Put the lead attendant on the phone. Now. Keller's face went pale. Keller froze, her throat dry. Every eye in the cabin was on her. Phones recording, passengers leaning forward like spectators at a trial. She swallowed, then reluctantly took Damon's phone. Hello, sir. This is lead attendant Keller. There's been a misunderstanding. Marcus Grant's voice was calm, but iron hard. Misunderstanding? My sons have their tickets. Seats 1 Ampere and 1B, correct? Keller stammered. Yes, but... No, but... His voice cut through her excuses. You saw 2 young black men and assumed they didn't belong in first class. Do not insult me with anything else. Gasps scattered through the cabin. Keller's lips quivered as she tried to salvage dignity. Sir, you were only humiliating my family in front of a cabin full of witnesses. That's not protocol. That's prejudice. Keller froze. The words echoed like a verdict. Passengers shifted, nodding. Some, muttering, he's right. Darius sat quietly, hands folded, his composure steady even as tension crackled. Damon leaned back in his seat, watching Keller crumble. Marcus's tone deepened. Put the captain on the line. Now, the captain, a tall man with silvered hair, emerged from the cockpit with stiff shoulders. He accepted the phone, jaw tight. Mr. Grant, explain why my sons are being harassed in seats they purchased. The captain cleared his throat. Mr. Grant, I assure you our crew is trained to maintain order. This was a simple, Marcus's voice thundered. Order? Order is built on fairness. There is no order when arrogance replaces policy. If your crew cannot grasp that, they don't belong on my airline. The captain's face flushed red. With respect, sir, it's not so simple. Oh, it's simple, Marcus snapped. I built Hale International to represent excellence. Excellence doesn't look like my children being treated as trespassers on their own tickets. Excellence means respect for every single passenger. The cabin broke into spontaneous applause. Some passengers even stood, clapping fiercely. Phones were raised higher. Hashtags were already forming in whispers. Keller tried to speak again, desperation clawing at her words. Sir, you must understand, these boys, Marcus's voice sharpened into a blade. They are not boys. They are my sons. And tonight they stood taller than any of you. Keller's composure shattered. Her lips trembled. The junior attendants shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. The captain held the phone tighter. Mr. Grant, perhaps we should address this privately. After landing, absolutely not, Marcus barked. This is happening in front of witnesses, and it will be resolved in front of witnesses. Hand my sons back the phone. The captain, pale and sweating, returned it to Damon. Stay seated, Marcus ordered. Don't move an inch. Record everything. I'm on the line with corporate right now. Darius glanced at Keller, whose face had gone completely white. He leaned in, his voice steady but devastatingly clear. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's arrogance. And arrogance never lasts long. The words carried across the cabin, passengers nodding in agreement. Someone muttered, he's right. Keller's pride had been her weapon, But now it was her downfall. And the twins knew. This wasn't over yet. The storm was only beginning. The cabin buzzed with tension so thick it felt like static before a lightning strike. Keller stood rigid, her hands clenched, while Damon and Darius remained calmly in their seats, refusing to be moved. The passengers had turned into an audience, some leaning out of their rows, others whispering commentary as phones streamed live. On Damon's screen, Marcus's voice was a steady storm. "Corporate is connected. They're patching me in with HR and the board. Keep recording, son." Keller's voice cracked as she tried again. "Sir, please, this is damaging morale for the crew. We were only following—" "Following what?" Marcus snapped. "Not policy, not procedure. You were following arrogance." The junior attendants shifted uncomfortably, caught between loyalty and fear. One finally whispered, "He's right. We scanned their tickets twice. They were valid." Keller spun on her colleague, eyes blazing. Quiet. But it was too late. Passengers erupted with murmurs. She admitted it. They did belong here. The captain rubbed his temples, sweat beading at his hairline. He leaned down toward Keller, voice low but audible. "This is beyond us now. Every second we resist, we dig deeper." Darius spoke then, his calm voice cutting through the noise. "Dad, she threatened to call security on us before we even took off. She called us boys and said we didn't look the part." The gasps were audible this time, outrage rippling across the cabin. A woman in row 3 called out, "We all heard it." Others raised their phones higher. Marcus's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Board, you hearing this?" A new voice came over the line, cold, corporate, and final. "Yes, Mr. Grant. We're documenting every word. Please continue recording." Keller's knees buckled slightly. She grabbed the seat back for support. The mask of confidence had slipped completely. Her arrogance was now raw fear. "Captain," Marcus continued, "I trust you understand what this means." The captain's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir." "Say it." Marcus pressed. The captain swallowed, then turned toward the cabin, his voice heavy. There was no mistake. These passengers were entitled to their seats. They were mistreated. Applause broke out, fierce and unrelenting. Passengers clapped, whistled, shouted words like respect, and finally, Keller staggered back, her pride collapsing under the weight of exposure. She whispered to herself, "This can't be happening." But it was. Marcus's voice returned, decisive and unyielding. "Corporate will have a response waiting on the ground. Until then, my sons are to be treated as the highest priority passengers on this flight. Do you understand?" The captain's reply was stiff. "Understood." "And Keller?" Marcus's tone sharpened. "Tell her she won't be wearing that uniform much longer." Keller's eyes widened, tears threatening to fall, but she bit them back. The passengers, however, caught every flicker of fear. Darius leaned back, folding his arms. Damon's lips curved into a faint smile. They didn't need to shout. They didn't need to gloat. Their father's voice, their truth, and the witnesses surrounding them had done the work. But deep down, they both knew. The real reckoning hadn't even landed yet. The plane was still in the air. The story was still unfolding, and the careers of the entire arrogant crew now hung by a thread that corporate was already pulling. The storm had only begun, and when it hit the ground, it would hit like a hammer. The plane cut smoothly through the night sky. But inside the cabin, tension churned heavier than turbulence. Passengers whispered and shifted, their phones glowing like fireflies, recording every flicker of the crew's fear. Darius and Damon sat side by side, perfectly composed. Their silence wasn't weakness, it was strength, amplified by the voice still booming from Damon's phone. "Marcus Grant. Corporate has confirmed." Marcus said, his voice cold steel. "Every second of this flight is under review." "Keller, do you understand what that means?" Keller stood frozen, a statue carved out of shame. "Sir, You don't need to answer," Marcus cut her off. "Because you won't be explaining this to me. You'll be explaining it to HR, to the board, and to every passenger here who watched you try to humiliate my family." Gasps spread across the cabin. A businessman muttered, "He's ending her career mid-air." The captain cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Mr. Grant, please." Marcus's voice sharpened. "Captain, don't defend arrogance. You've already admitted my sons were mistreated. What you need to do now is ensure their dignity is restored. Starting now." The captain stiffened, nodding reluctantly. "Understood." Passengers clapped. The sound rolled like thunder, applause rising not just for the twins, but for the truth laid bare. Keller's face burned crimson. She turned, desperate, toward her colleagues. "Say something. Back me up." But the junior attendants wouldn't meet her eyes. One finally whispered, "He's right, Keller. We crossed a line." Her breath caught. Betrayal twisted in her gut. "You cowards," she hissed under her breath. Darius finally spoke, his voice quiet, but carrying like a steady drumbeat. "This isn't betrayal. It's accountability, something you've never faced until now." The words landed hard. Passengers nodded, murmuring in agreement. Someone said, "Sharp kid?" Another whispered, "Just like his father." Damon leaned forward, his tone razor sharp. "Dad, what happens when the crew violates trust this badly?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "They don't fly again." The cabin gasped. Keller staggered back, nearly losing her balance. You can't fire an entire team over this?" "Oh, I can," Marcus said, calm as ice. "Because arrogance at altitude is a safety risk. If you can't respect passengers, you can't protect them." The passengers erupted into cheers. A woman across the aisle clapped loudly. "That's justice," she cried. Keller's composure cracked completely. Tears filled her eyes as she turned to the captain. "You're just going to let him ruin us?" The captain didn't answer. His silence was enough. Darius leaned toward Damon, his voice low but certain. "It's over. She knows it." But Damon shook his head, eyes narrowing. "Not yet. She's still going to fight. Pride always dies loud." And as if to prove him right, Keller squared her shoulders, her voice breaking but defiant. "You may own this airline, Mr. Grant, but you don't own me." The line went silent for a heartbeat. Then Marcus's laugh rumbled darkly through the speaker. "You're right. I don't. But I do own your uniform. And when we land, it won't be yours anymore." The cabin roared with applause. Keller's mask finally shattered. She turned, retreating down the aisle, tears streaking her cheeks, the weight of every phone capturing her fall. The twins sat in silence, their father's voice still echoing in their ears. The storm had turned, but the true impact hadn't even landed yet. The cabin hummed with whispers after Keller's retreat, but the storm wasn't over. Damon placed his phone on the tray, speaker still on. Marcus's voice filling the silence. "Corporate is patched in," Marcus said. "Passengers, I know many of you are recording. Good. Keep recording. Tonight, truth matters more than polish." Gasps rippled through the rows. A woman whispered, "The CEO himself." A man muttered, "This is history." The captain shifted uneasily at the front of the cabin. "Mr. Grant, with respect, it's not protocol to involve passengers in—" "Protocol?" Marcus cut him off, steel in his tone. "You lost the right to hide behind protocol the moment my sons were treated like imposters. These passengers are witnesses now." A cheer rose. Phones lifted higher. Someone shouted, "We've got their backs!" Darius, calm as ever, leaned slightly forward. "Dad, should they give statements?" Marcus didn't miss a beat. "Yes. When you land, corporate security will meet the flight. Every passenger who wants to provide testimony will be heard. Their recordings will be part of the official investigation." Keller, pale and trembling, stumbled out of the galley, her eyes darting wildly. "This is madness. They'll twist everything to make me look like a villain." "They don't need to twist anything." Marcus's voice boomed. "You did that yourself." The cabin erupted in murmurs of agreement. A college student in row 3 stood. "I saw everything. I'll testify. They were respectful the whole time. She treated them like criminals." Others chimed in. "I'll speak too." Count me in. This isn't the first time I've seen attendants act like this. Keller's lips trembled. You're all against me? Damon's eyes locked on her, sharp and unyielding. No, we're all for truth. Her face crumpled. She turned away, muttering, This isn't fair. Darius's calm voice rose, steady and devastating. Fairness would have been respecting our tickets. Fairness would have been leaving us in peace. What's unfair is what you did, and now you're facing it. The passengers applauded, their voices swelling in agreement. Keller staggered back into the galley, her sobs faint but audible. Marcus's voice dropped lower, colder. Captain, are you listening? Yes, sir, the captain said tightly. Then you understand. When this flight lands, your crew will be escorted off. Their badges will be revoked immediately. I won't have arrogance poisoning the company I built. The captain swallowed hard. Understood. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Then, Marcus's tone softened only slightly. Darius, Damon, you've handled yourselves with dignity. You didn't raise your voices. You didn't trade insults. You stood your ground. That's leadership. Damon leaned back, exhaling. We just didn't want to be invisible. Marcus's voice warmed. And you'll never be invisible. Not as long as you carry yourselves like you did tonight. The passengers clapped again, louder, sharper, a standing ovation from some. Darius looked around, his voice carrying calm authority beyond his years. This isn't just about us. It's about anyone who's ever been told they didn't belong. Tonight proves, if you stand firm, you can't be erased. The words sent a shiver through the cabin. People nodded, wiping tears, phones still capturing every moment. Keller's arrogance had died, but the truth had taken flight. The balance of power wasn't just shifting anymore, it had already shifted. The plane droned steadily above the clouds, but inside, the cabin felt like a courtroom. Every witness had spoken with their phones. Every passenger had chosen a side, and the crew, once untouchable, stood cornered, their empire of authority collapsing under the weight of exposure. Marcus's voice still rumbled from Damon's phone, steady and unrelenting. Captain, I trust you've informed your crew of the consequences. Yes, sir, the captain muttered, voice clipped with resignation. Then let me make it clear, Marcus continued. This isn't a suspension. This is termination. Keller and her supporting staff will not operate another Hale International flight. Their arrogance has cost them their wings. Keller gasped audibly from the galley. You can't do this! I've given 20 years to this airline. Marcus cut her off, his tone sharp as a blade. You gave 20 years, and tonight you threw it away in 20 seconds. Loyalty means nothing without integrity. The word struck like a gavel. Passengers clapped loudly, some shouting, That's right, and accountability. The junior attendants looked pale, eyes brimming with regret. One whispered, I'm sorry, in the twins' direction. Darius nodded calmly. It's not us you should apologize to. It's every passenger you've ever dismissed. That line landed with devastating force. Phones captured it, passengers repeated it in whispers, and Keller buried her face in her hands. Marcus wasn't finished. His tone softened only for his sons. Darius, Damon, you proved tonight that you carry our family's name with honor. You didn't just defend yourselves. You defended the dignity of every customer who puts their trust in us. Damon's chest tightened, but he smiled faintly. We just wanted what we paid for, Dad. And you'll always have it, Marcus said firmly. But remember, with our name comes responsibility. You showed the world how to answer arrogance with dignity and truth. The passengers erupted again in applause, this time a standing ovation from half the cabin. Phones shook as people clapped, voices cheering, some even whistling. The twins' calm defiance had ignited something greater, belief. Keller stumbled from the galley, her eyes red, her hands trembling. Please, she whispered, don't end my career like this. I have a family. Damon's gaze was steady, merciless, but not cruel. You should have thought about families before you tried to humiliate ours. Gasps filled the air. Keller covered her mouth, retreating again, her sobs muffled. The captain rubbed his temples, then addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize on behalf of this crew. What happened tonight should never occur on any flight. His voice cracked slightly, but he forced the words out. When we land, corporate will meet us. Statements will be taken. Justice will be served. The announcement sent ripples through the passengers. Relief, vindication, and anticipation because they knew they were about to witness the rarest thing, accountability, in real time. Marcus's final words carried like thunder through the speaker. Captain, ensure my sons arrive safely. The rest will answer to me. The line clicked. Silence followed, but it was the silence of resolution, the calm after a storm. Darius leaned back, folding his arms. Damon slipped his phone into his pocket, exhaling for the first time in hours. The arrogance was gone. The authority had flipped. And the careers of the crew weren't hanging in question anymore. They were already gone, stripped midair. The plane pressed on toward its destination, but for everyone on board, the real journey had already been written. Arrogance destroyed, dignity defended, justice alive. The twins didn't need to say another word. The sky had already spoken for them. The landing gear thudded down, jolting the cabin, but the real impact was still to come. Passengers sat upright, buzzing with anticipation. Everyone knew this wasn't an ordinary arrival. It was the end of a storm. Damon glanced at his brother. Darius's expression was calm, but his eyes flickered with the weight of it all. We're not just passengers anymore, Damon whispered. We're witnesses. The plane rolled to a stop at the gate. Instead of the usual bustle of cleaners and connecting crews, men and women in Navy corporate suits boarded first, their presence sharp and deliberate. The murmurs in the cabin grew louder. Phones were already up, recording this unusual arrival. The supervisor stepped aside, her posture tense. Corporate security, she announced. Passengers gasped as the suited team strode down the aisle with purposeful steps. The lead officer, a woman with a clipped voice, spoke firmly. Marcus Grant has authorized an immediate investigation. We're here to debrief the crew and collect witness testimony. Keller emerged from the galley, pale and shaking. The arrogance that once sharpened her voice was gone, replaced with frantic pleas. Please, this isn't necessary. It was just... Stop, the officer snapped, her voice slicing through the cabin. We've reviewed the live stream. We've heard the passengers. We've heard Mr. Grant. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is misconduct. The passengers clapped spontaneously, the sound like a gavel striking. The officer turned to the captain. You and your entire team are to disembark immediately. Hand over your badges. Now. The captain's lips pressed thin, his hands trembling as he unpinned his badge. One by one, the junior attendants followed, their shoulders slumped. Phones recorded every second. Finally, Keller's turn came. Her hands shook violently as she unclipped the wings from her chest. She clutched them to her palm, whispering, 20 years. The officer's gaze was icy, and tonight, 20 seconds destroyed them. Gasps rippled. Keller's knees buckled. She tried to hand over the pin, but her grip trembled too hard. At last, she let it fall into the officer's open hand. The passengers erupted again, this time in thunderous applause. Some stood, others whistled, voices crying, justice and respect. Damon sat still, watching the once arrogant attendant shrink under the spotlight she once wielded. Darius whispered softly, "It's over." But Damon shook his head. No, this is just the beginning. People will remember this long after the plane empties. The officer turned to the twins, her voice carrying weight. Mr. Grant instructed us to extend his gratitude to you both. Your composure tonight ensured this ended with dignity, not chaos. Darius nodded calmly. Dignity was all we asked for. Applause swelled again. Passengers chanting softly, "Respect! Respect!" Their voices lifting the twins higher than any luxury ever could. As the disgraced crew shuffled down the aisle under corporate escort, their uniforms stripped of meaning, the truth became undeniable. Arrogance had been dethroned, and dignity had won. And for the first time, the twins didn't feel like passengers on their father's airline. They felt like its future. The cabin doors hissed open, but instead of the usual rush of passengers scrambling for baggage, everyone froze. The jet bridge was lined with cameras, microphones, and flashing bulbs. Word had spread faster than the plane itself. Damon blinked against the sudden glare. Dad didn't waste time, did he? Darius smirked faintly. When does he ever? Corporate security escorted the disgraced crew down the aisle first. Keller kept her head bowed, her face hidden behind trembling hands. But the lenses caught every step. Questions hurled through the air. Why did you target the twins? Do you regret your actions? What do you say to passengers who saw everything? No answers came. The crew moved like ghosts, stripped of authority, their arrogance dissolved into public shame. Then the tide shifted. All eyes turned to the twins. Darius, Damon, what happened on board? Did you know this would go viral? How did you stay so calm? Passengers surrounded them, many speaking to reporters before the twins could. A woman in her 60s, elegant and composed, told the cameras, I watched the whole thing. Those boys did nothing wrong. The attendant humiliated them without cause. Their father was right, justice had to be served. Another passenger added, they carried themselves with more dignity than most adults I've ever met. That cabin became a courtroom, and they stood taller than the people in charge. The reporters turned back to the twins. Damon, fiery as ever, raised his chin. We just wanted respect, that's all. We had tickets. We belonged in those seats, and we weren't going to be erased. The crowd erupted, flashes popping like fireworks. Darius placed a steady hand on his brother's shoulder, his calm voice balancing Damon's fire. This isn't only about us. It's about every passenger who's been treated like they don't belong. Tonight shows that truth matters and that arrogance has consequences. The words spread like fuel to flame. Tweets and live stream captions lit up. Number respect at 30,000 feet. Number hail twins justice, number arrogance. Grounded by the time they reached the terminal, the noise was deafening. Passengers who had flown in other cabins joined the circle, some hugging the twins, others shaking their hands. A child tugged Damon's sleeve and whispered, "You're my hero." For a moment, Damon couldn't speak. He just smiled, crouched, and said, "Be proud of who you are, always." Behind them, the corporate officer spoke to reporters with crisp efficiency. The entire crew responsible has been terminated pending formal review. Hale International will be issuing a public apology and reinforcing our zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. This company stands with its passengers always. The cameras panned back to the twins. Their father's presence wasn't physical, but his influence was everywhere, in the decisive actions, in the support of strangers, in the way the world was already rewriting this story. Darius whispered, almost to himself. Dad didn't just build an airline, he built a standard. Damon nodded, and tonight, we had to defend it. Reporters shouted more questions, but for the twins, the answers no longer mattered. The truth had already flown farther than any plane ever could. By the time Darius and Damon reached the arrivals hall, the terminal itself had transformed into a stage. Reporters filled every corner, cameras perched on shoulders, microphones thrust forward like spears. Screens above the gates replayed clips of the live stream from the plane. The twins hadn't planned to speak. They just wanted to leave quietly. But silence was no longer an option. Corporate executives stepped forward, led by the COO of Hale International, her expression sharp but resolute. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, her voice carrying across the echoing hall, tonight's incident is unacceptable and beneath the standards our company represents. Effective immediately, the flight crew involved has been terminated. Further, Hale International will undergo mandatory retraining across all divisions. Discrimination, subtle or overt, has no place here. The crowd erupted in applause. Then she turned, gesturing toward the twins. Darius, Damon, on behalf of this airline, and with the authority of your father, Marcus Grant, I want to thank you. Not just for enduring injustice with composure, but for exposing it with dignity. Darius's cheeks warmed as he stepped toward the microphones. He spoke slowly, carefully, his words deliberate. We didn't set out to make headlines. We just wanted to sit in the seats we were assigned. But what happened tonight shows that if you stand your ground, truth wins. Respect wins. Reporters shouted questions, but Damon leaned in, fire in his tone. We're proud of who we are. We're proud of what our father built. And we're not going to let anyone erase us or anyone else because they don't think we belong. The room thundered with applause, louder than the roar of any jet engine. The COO stepped forward again, placing commemorative VIP medallions into each of their hands. From this moment forward, your names will represent the very standard of fairness on HALE international flights. These medallions aren't privileges. They're reminders to us and to the world of what we stand for. Passengers from the flight cheered. Some cried. A man shouted, "You made history tonight!" The camera zoomed in on the twins, the medallions catching the light. For a fleeting moment, they looked less like teenagers and more like symbols, emblems of a legacy larger than themselves. As the noise swelled, Damon leaned close to Darius. "Think Dad's proud?" Darius smiled faintly. "He already told us, but hearing it from the world, that's different." Their phones buzzed in their pockets, texts pouring in, hashtags trending, messages from friends, family, even strangers across the globe. The COO closed the conference with words that echoed like a promise. Arrogance was fired tonight. Dignity was promoted, and the world was watching. The crowd cheered one final time as security guided the twins through the terminal, away from the flashing lights and toward a quieter exit. Yet the silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was peace. For the first time since they'd boarded the plane, Darius and Damon felt the weight lift from their shoulders. They weren't just passengers anymore. They were the future of an airline, the future of a legacy, and living proof that no one, no matter how powerful their uniform, could erase them. The black sedan slid away from the airport, its tinted windows muting the noise of reporters still shouting questions outside. For the first time since boarding, Darius and Damon were wrapped in silence, a heavy, thoughtful silence. Damon exhaled, leaning back into the leather seat. Man, that was insane. Darius's lips curved into the faintest smile. Insane, yeah, but necessary. The city lights blurred past. The adrenaline that had carried them through the confrontation was fading, replaced by a steady hum of reflection. Neither twin spoke for a long moment. Then Damon broke the quiet. "Do you think we did the right thing? Calling Dad? Making it all blow up like that?" Darius turned to him, eyes steady. "We didn't make it blow up. They did. We just refused to shrink." Damon nodded slowly, his fire tempered by his brother's calm. "Still, seeing Keller cry like that, I didn't enjoy it, but I also didn't feel sorry. Not really." "That's because you saw the truth," Darius said softly. "She wasn't crying for us. She was crying for herself, for her career, her pride. But she never once apologized until she was cornered. That tells you everything." The words hung in the quiet car. Damon ran his hands over the medallion in his pocket, its edges cool against his skin. "We didn't just represent ourselves tonight, did we?" "No," Darius said. "We represented every person who's ever been told they didn't belong in a seat they earned." Damon swallowed hard. "You think Dad planned this? Like, sent us on that flight knowing something might happen?" Darius chuckled. "You give him too much credit. He didn't need to plan it. He just raised us to never bow our heads. The world, it gave us the test." The sedan turned toward the family estate. Their phones buzzed nonstop in their laps, notifications, messages, trending hashtags that made their names feel bigger than they ever imagined. One text stood out, though, from Marcus Grant himself. "Proud doesn't begin to cover it. We'll talk in the morning. Rest now, you earned it." Damon smiled faintly at the screen. Dad's never this soft. Darius leaned his head back against the seat. Even iron has to bend when it sees fire in its reflection. Outside, the night stretched endlessly, quiet and deep. The storm of arrogance had passed. In its wake, The twins felt something new settling over them, not victory, not revenge. It was clarity. They weren't just Marcus Grant's sons anymore. They were symbols of the future he had built, and proof that dignity was stronger than arrogance every single time. Morning sunlight spilled across the Grant estate, painting the marble floors in golden streaks. Darius and Damon sat at the long oak breakfast table, untouched plates of food cooling in front of them. They were still replaying the night in their minds when the sound of measured footsteps filled the room. Marcus Grant entered, his presence commanding without effort. No suit today, just a crisp shirt and the weight of a man who built empires. His gaze lingered on his sons, and for a moment the steely CEO softened. "You two," he said, voice low but proud, "did more in one night than most men do in a lifetime." Damon leaned forward, restless. "We didn't plan for it, Dad. We just couldn't let her push us around." Marcus nodded. "That's what made it powerful. You didn't fight for status. You fought for respect." Darius finally spoke, his calm tone steady. "It felt bigger than us, though, like we were carrying something heavier." "You were," Marcus said, taking a seat across from them. "You carried the name Grant, not the wealth, not the company, the dignity. Our name has always meant fighting for our place in rooms that didn't want us there. Last night, you proved the next generation understands that better than anyone." Damon shifted uncomfortably. "But Keller and the crew, they lost everything." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "They didn't lose it. They threw it away. Power with arrogance is poison, and poison always kills the one holding it." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the ping of Marcus's phone. He placed it on the table, screen lit with global headlines. "Twins of airline CEO face discrimination, respond with grace. Hale International fires entire crew after viral incident. Respect at 30,000 feet sparks industry reckoning." Darius read them quietly. "It's everywhere." "It's more than everywhere," Marcus said. "It's a movement. Other airlines are already issuing statements. Unions are demanding accountability. People are talking about you two as the future of Hale International. They don't see you as kids anymore." Damon blinked, the weight of it sinking in. "That's a lot." Marcus smiled faintly. "It is, and it's only the beginning. You showed the world that dignity can't be checked at the gate. Now it's on us to build something bigger from that moment." For the first time, Darius and Damon felt the true size of the storm they'd sparked. It wasn't just a family issue. It wasn't just one flight. It was a mirror the whole industry was being forced to look into. Damon exhaled slowly. "So, what now?" Marcus leaned back, eyes steady. "Now, we lead. Together. This isn't just about Hale Airlines anymore. It's about proving that respect isn't negotiable, no matter the uniform, no matter the seat." The twins exchanged a glance. For years, they had lived in their father's shadow, carrying his name, but not his burden. Last night had changed that. They weren't shadows anymore. They were flame. And the world had already noticed. 2 weeks later, the story hadn't slowed, it had only grown. Hashtags still trended. News outlets replayed the footage. Commentators debated what the Grant twins incident meant for the future of corporate responsibility. And now, Darius and Damon stood on stage beside their father, facing a crowd of thousands at Hale International's annual summit. The backdrop was a massive banner. "Respect is non-negotiable." Marcus stepped up first, his voice resonant. "I built this company with the belief that every passenger, every employee deserves dignity. Last month, my sons reminded the world of that truth. They didn't seek attention, they demanded respect. And because of their courage, we're changing everything." The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. Then Marcus gestured toward his sons. "This is not just about me anymore. The next generation has spoken, and you'll hear it from them." Darius stepped forward, his calm tone carrying far. "We didn't plan to be symbols. We just stood our ground. But we've learned that sometimes standing your ground is enough to shake the world awake. Last night on that flight, We realized we weren't just passengers. We were voices, and every person deserves to be heard. The applause grew louder, some people rising to their feet. Then Damon took the mic, fire in his words. We were told we didn't belong in our own seats. But here's the truth. Nobody gets to decide where you belong except you. Not arrogance, not prejudice, not a uniform. We stood up for ourselves, but what matters more is that we stood up for everyone who's ever been pushed to the back when they had every right to be at the front. The hall thundered with cheers. Some shouted the new slogan, "Respect is non-negotiable." The twins stepped back, side by side, the ovation washing over them. They glanced at each other and smiled the same smile they'd shared since childhood, when words weren't needed to understand. Later that night, as the city lights glittered outside their hotel window, Damon turned to Darius. We didn't just survive that flight. We changed the course of the company, maybe even the industry. Darius nodded, his voice quiet but certain. We didn't just defend our seats. We claimed our place in history. Their phones buzzed again with messages, thank yous from strangers, stories from passengers around the world who had faced their own moments of being dismissed, overlooked, erased. The twins read them silently, feeling the invisible thread of connection binding them to countless others. It wasn't just about a flight anymore. It was about a movement. And as they finally turned out the lights, sinking into the quiet of the night, they knew one truth with unshakable certainty. They hadn't just been Marcus Grant's sons on that plane. They had become the standard of respect in the skies, and the world would never forget. And that is another story shared here on Respect Win Stories. If this one touched your heart, inspired you, or made you think, please hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps us bring more powerful stories your way. Drop your city or state in the comments, and let us see how far these stories travel across the world. Remember, no matter the struggle, no matter the ending, respect always wins. See you in the next story. Bye-bye.